this computer. All right. We got that going. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Healing from Narcissistic Abuse Summit. My name's Damiani, and I am your summit host. And I am really excited to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Erin Watson. Dr. Erin Watson specializes in helping people recover from narcissistic system abuse and family scapegoating. She's an author, an educator, and a coach with 15 years of experience helping people rebuild their identity, their energy, their confidence, and their lives after attachment trauma and parental wounding. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm so excited to dive into this. Oh my goodness. So starting off, you coined the term narcissistic system abuse. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and why it's so important for survivors to understand?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about narcissistic abuse as in the narcissistic perpetrator and their target. And yet, a lot of the wounding that we suffer is from the entire system that gets involved in perpetuating that abuse. So, for example, the bystanders, the flying monkeys, the pawns, the golden children, the narcissistic heirs and heiresses that continue the legacy of abuse. And in addition to that, we're also talking about how the narcissistic abuser can actually have that power. Because without the system backing them up, it's really just their efforts against us, their word against ours. And so, what they have to do in order to have that power is actually do a lot of recruiting to get allies, to get an army, to create a narrative, to work very, very hard to actually dismantle you socially, structurally, and from within. So, it's really not just that we have a narcissistic abuser who is causing harm, although they are. It is that they are working systemically and systematically to create you in such a certain light that you lose trust in yourself, that you lose trust in others. And by doing so, you also feel you need to rely on the narcissistic system to survive. And it's not just acting on you, right? It's I mean, maybe on you as a target, on you as a scapegoat, but it's acting on the golden children. It's acting on the flying monkeys. It's acting on the bystanders who remain silent and compliant. Everybody gets manipulated. Everybody gets groomed. Everybody gets triangulated and worked in to what I call this narcissistic machine. And for everybody to survive that machine, they need to adhere to this carefully curated narrative. And it works via a system of scarcity. The narcissist creates scarcity. There's only so many crumbs of love, attention, support, belonging that are available. And so here they are, fight for them. So who's going to get thrown under the bus? Who's going to be targeted? Who's going to stand up? And who do we need to dismantle so that we can maintain this narrative? And that's the narcissist who has this sense of, a fear and self-loathing and, their own attachment stuff, likely, who fears their own abandonment. And so they recruit and they recruit and they recruit. And that is how they maintain their sense of belonging and their sense of power by creating a machine where everybody works for them and by their rules. It's really, it's terrifying when you think of it, right, Taylor? Like that's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
So terrifying.
This
Because
is,
you're not just fighting the person. You're fighting a network, and you're fighting a network that needs you to be targeted for their survival. They need you to be the bad guy so that they feel better about being compliant in this, because they need to be compliant in order to get their scraps. So there's a lot that has to happen. And if we don't recognize how the system is working, Because sometimes it's siblings, it's parents, it's extended family, or it's your boss and your coworkers and your friends and the neighbors that heard it. It
Yeah.
extends out. It's your reputation above and beyond. And if we don't recognize that, then we say things like, but your family seems so nice, or that wasn't my experience with your boss. And we create this idea of, well, you must be making it up. I didn't feel that way. I don't see it. It's so covert. I can't see it.
Yeah.
So it must be you. There must actually be something about you, little scapegoat, little target.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would
Wow.
chronically invalidate. And then you internalize that and go, you're right. My whole life there has been something and I can't put my finger on it. So maybe it's me. And that's how the system dismantles you from the inside out.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Because so what you're speaking to is this paradigm shift of how we look at narcissism, a narcissist. It's a system. It's broader than an individual. It's a system.
It's a system, and the system abuses you. The narcissist does gaslighting, does guilt trips, does sort of martyr things or does manipulations. There is psychological and emotional abuse on the hands of the narcissistic abuser. But the systemic impacts of that abuse don't exclusively come from those targeted efforts. Those are painful and harmful. But let's say you had a support network that was like, whoa, yeah, I saw that happening too.
Yeah.
You would have some resilience. It wouldn't dismantle you.
Right.
But when everybody goes, yeah, you're right, you did deserve that, and it was your fault, and we're just gonna, let you kind of roll under the bus here.
Yeah.
Those systemic impacts of loss of self, of trust, loss of self of others, inability to make decisions, negative self-talk, poor self-esteem, low functioning in day-to-day life, no energy, it pervades your entire life, even when you're outside the system. So that's
Wow.
why I've coined the term to encompass the system, how they systematically dismantle you, and the systemic impacts that pervade your entire being and existence.
This is so cool and so powerful and so validating. It's incredible. I'm loving this. I am loving this.
We are loving narcissistic systems. It's so fun, jazz hands.
It's just incredibly validating. So, okay, let's talk. Another thing you talk a lot about is perfectionism. How is perfectionism related to NSA, as we're abbreviating it, and recovery from NSA?
Yeah. Perfectionism is one of those things that is like the impact. So a lot of, say, clients, you'll probably see this a lot too. Clients will come to you and they're just trying to be perfect in every way. Perfect in their thoughts, perfect in their actions, perfect. And it's to the point where it's holding them back. Like they're stuck at work, they're stuck in their goals, they're stuck in their recovery because they feel I'm constantly not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not trying hard enough. There's something I'm missing. I must be at fault. I must be wrong. I must be faulty.
Yeah.
And so that is one of those ways that narcissistic system abuse really robbed you of those skills to, I want to say succeed in life, but I don't really think that's true because I think we are succeeding. I mean, when you've been dismantled that much, getting out of bed and brushing your teeth is succeeding. Like this is really hard.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I think it's this idea of it's so pervasive, the need for survival. And that's what the perfectionism really is about. Like the impact of it is that you're struggling so much and thinking somehow it's your fault. Like if you could just try harder and be better.
Right.
Like it groomed you, it manipulated your mind. And I call that the narcissistic training, is it actually fed you this belief about yourself that you aren't perfect and that you have to be in order for others to like you, to accept you, to have you belong. And what happens is a lot of people don't recognize this. Like they'll show up for coaching or they'll show up for therapy and they go, I'm trying everything and I don't know what's going on with me. And that's usually an indicator that actually there might be some attachment trauma in there that we want to explore. The other thing about perfectionism, as I mentioned, is it really is about survival needs. It's not a desire to be perfect. I mean, we know logically that's a moving target. It's not, it's a construct. It doesn't
Mhm.
really exist. And it's
Right.
not internally motivated. We're not like, I want to be perfect because I believe in this.
Yeah.
Let us give ourselves more grace, than we give ourselves credit for. We feel the need to be perfect because it's about doing exactly the thing that others need us to do, being
Mhm.
exactly the way others need us to be for their needs. Because we were told by the system that if you do not become or be or act or think or do in the way that the narcissistic system needs, you're literally out. You're abandoned. You're rejected. You lose everything structurally, psychologically, emotionally, family, social network. It's gone.
Mhm.
So there's a real motivation, an understandable, logical motivation to be
Oh, yeah.
absolutely perfect.
Mhm.
The problem, the catch 22, is that you need to be perfect to survive the system. But if you want to get out of the system, if you want to survive your life, you need to be imperfect. You need to risk
Mm.
imperfection. And you
Mhm.
can see how people aren't, like they want to try, but like the risk of trying, the risk of recovery is big because what they might lose in being imperfect, aka being what other people don't want them to be,
Mhm.
um, can be immense for those who are suffering from narcissistic system abuse.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot there we need to unpack. So, first question is, how does perfectionism get in the way of recovery?
Yeah, I think it really is about this. It's about this how the system has almost like Trojan horsed your recovery somehow. Like the
Mm.
system is like, ooh, I'm going to make it so that you can't even try recovery because the consequences are so dire. In fact, if you do things like believe in yourself or assert a boundary or have some independence, we're going to take that, we're going to twist it, we're going to
Mm.
use it against you, and we're going to use it as evidence that you are problematic, faulty, dangerous. We're going to lob that back at you. It's like this grenade that is
Mm.
actively used against you. So it's hard because when you take that risk to be imperfect, you actually it's almost like it feels like recovery is actually dangerous.
Mm.
Because in your life, when you did assert yourself,
Yeah.
there were serious consequences. You were punished.
Mhm.
It was dangerous. So
Yeah.
perfection gets in the way because it literally it literally is the trap door that holds you from falling. And then someone says, well, okay, how do you want to recover? And it's like, I don't actually want to go whoop, because everything I've built my identity on and my safety on has been serving the system. That's all I
Yeah.
was allowed to do, and it's all I've been allowed to know. And you're going to
Wow.
say, go to battle, take your armor off. No,
Terrifying.
no, yeah. Who would want to take that risk?
No one. No one.
Yeah.
So, okay, you may have already answered this question, but I just want to give you opportunity to say more about it if you want. Can you say a little bit more about this idea of the risk of recovery and why it's so hard? And you're speaking to that, but we all want to recover and ASAP, So how does this risk hold us back?
That's such a great question, Taylor. It really is about opening yourself up to immense loss and grief, um,
Mm.
which admittedly, if you don't have a good support structure, if you don't have safety, are not necessarily things that you would want to embark on right
Mhm.
away, right? So the risk is, I want my independence, but in doing so, I might actually lose my family. Whoa, those don't they seem like they don't balance out very well. Okay, I want to succeed in my job, but in doing so, my narcissistic boss and coworkers might actually sabotage me if I don't adhere, right?
Oh, great.
Yay! So you're like, okay, I might lose my family, I might lose my reputation, I might lose all my structural supports, I might lose any financial support, and I actually am not sure if I can financially support myself because I've stepped in my own way because I was told to stay small, don't put myself out there, I don't have the energy left to try because I've been trying so hard to keep this machine running for them that I don't have any energy left to even do anything for myself. And so you're taking these immense risks by literally walking yourself to that trap door, opening it and being like, here we go, down I go. Obviously, you and I know on the other side of this that there's immense freedom. There's immense rewards, right? You're opening the cage, you're walking out, and it feels like a barren wasteland. You're like, I want to go back in that cage because I knew what was up.
Yeah.
And can be a very lonely, painful, agonizing road for a little bit. And that's the risk. But there's also a different risk in there. And that's the risk of believing different things about yourself. The risk of thinking differently about yourself. The risk of asserting a boundary and knowing people respect it, or the risk of allowing yourself to express feelings that weren't allowed. There's risks we take that are just profoundly uncomfortable. And they're going to send those danger triggers, danger, 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 danger. Don't do that. Keep yourself small. Oh my goodness, what are you doing? And we have to be able to find some strength and courage and resilience in that. Obviously, that's the work that you do, and that's the work that I do in guiding people through this, right? Nobody has to do it alone, right? This is why we have these summits and have these trainings and offer these communities. It's literally so that people open the cage and go, oh, there's others there. Okay, I'm not like walking in a bear. I'm walking with friends here.
Yeah. Wow. So you touch on, or you kind of hint at some myths that we have about recovery. What else do people get wrong about recovery from NSA?
Yeah. There's two things. Well, I'm sure there's a million. I mean, we've been told to think faulty thoughts about ourselves constantly.
Yeah.
But sort of two that I identify are the idea that it has to be this grand transformation, that recovery is this like huge overhaul of your life. Like, let's rewire your brain and let's take your heart apart and like fill it with new thoughts. And let's dismantle your entire social network and and it's like, whoa, I wouldn't really want to do that.
Yeah.
That sounds scary and overwhelming, and I'm going to shut down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. So I think a lot of people, if that's the idea of recovery, is this like grand thing and this grand outcome, and if you work hard enough, you'll get there and you'll feel it, and it will be joy and it will be amazing and everything will be easy. And that's not recovery. So like that's the other myth, that recovery is going to be this like beautiful epiphany at the end of a really hard tunnel. Recovery is not. Recovery is a practice, and it's an ongoing practice, and you're going to have beautiful epiphanies the entire way along, and you're going to have hard things the entire way along. They're just going to be different, new hard things, but you can do that. That's life. And so I think of recovery not as a destination that we arrive at, and when we arrive, we're exhausted and have to take a very long nap, but rather something we do every single day for ourselves. Because the real trauma in all of this is that we didn't get to exist in our own lives for ourselves. And that's narcissistic trauma. And so every day, if you can be this like recovery rebel and you go, I'm actually not going to believe that lie you told me about myself. I'm not going to believe it for 5 whole minutes. And I might believe it because it's hard. But for 5 whole minutes, I'm going to occupy this space where I embody something different than what you said was available to me. And And that's recovery. Those little
Yeah.
practices where over time you are thinking differently. You didn't take your brain out and put a new one in.
Mm-mm.
You didn't even necessarily have to leave the toxic system if you can't, right? Because you might not be able to right now, but you were able to find pockets, right? Places, small places where you could try, small
Mm-hmm.
places where you could do something a little bit differently and gain that courage and gain that resilience and develop those skills. And and you do end up in this place of transformation because those little things have exponential impacts. They're like ripples in a lake, and every little thing you do builds on it and it becomes a habit. So eventually your brain is rewired, but it's not because you had to abandon yourself the way they abandoned you. It's because you came back into yourself and you owned yourself in spite of them not wanting you to do that, because that was the most threatening thing to the machine.
Mm.
So I like to guide people through these rebellious acts of recovery in ways that feel safe,
Yeah.
and in ways that feel approachable, and that don't have this undercurrent of, if I do recovery perfectly, then, right? Because we have ideas like
Yes.
there's the perfectionism piece again, like, oh, I have to
Yes.
have therapy in this class and then that coaching, and then I have to do it this way, and I didn't do my homework this week, so I guess I'll just eat cupcakes for a month straight.
Yeah, we get back into the same cycle of perfectionism. And
Yeah.
in recovery, we're trying to do something different. So I love how you're describing it. It's gentle. It's not an overhaul, a complete overhaul. It's gentle. It's step by step, little by little.
Yeah, it is gentle, and I think people are afraid of that. Um, because when you're in the system, one of the things that you are told through this narcissistic training, um, is that you have to suffer to get any rewards. So all of a sudden, when someone comes in and says, actually, no, recovery doesn't have to be excruciating. And, in the therapy community, we say, like, oh, fast is slow. And I use that in the coaching world as well. And, or slow is fast. Go slow because you actually get, more exponential rewards there.
Mhm.
But yeah, it doesn't have to be painful. It can be like this beautiful awakening of coming into
Mm.
yourself.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that scares people because it's like, well, no, I was told I have to suffer. Like, that's literally, if I'm not suffering, I'm not doing it right.
Yeah. And if you've been suffering your whole life, then there's fear of not suffering. That's different. That's breaking the pattern that we
Yeah.
fear
Yes.
what's unfamiliar.
Yes. I loved what you said about that's breaking the pattern, right? Because when I think of the narcissistic machine, you think of like a system and it goes like this, and this is the way it goes all the time. And then one person, typically the target, who actually recognizes what the machine's doing,
Yeah.
and goes, I'm going to do this a little bit. And then the machine goes, whoa, 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 whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And they do anything possible to get you back into homeostasis. That's where the backlash, that's where the impacts, that's where it like ramps up. The abuse gets scary because they're like, just get back in line. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Get
And
into the
it's really,
gears. Yeah.
yes, it's the flying monkeys, and it's the bystanders, and it's the siblings, and it's the coworkers. It's not usually the narcissist that is doing that, because that time they've like Charles Manson to themselves. They're like, you get to do the work, right? So everybody else is doing the abuse by proxy. And so that's when it becomes the biggest risk, is when you do something just a little differently. So I say that to be aware of it, not afraid of it. But that's why it seems scary, and that's why you feel you need to suffer, because every time you have done something that ought to be gentle for yourself, there has been that immense reeling back in.
So how do we get out of this loop of perfectionism, so that we can move farther away from the narcissistic system and towards our own freedom? Do you have any thoughts or tips or strategies for our audience that they could try right now to kind of get the ball rolling?
Yeah, yes, because we want to get the ball rolling. I would say, obviously, and I'm sure every single person is going to say this, with compassion and grace. Please start there. Please start with compassion
Mm.
and grace for yourself. If you do not give yourself compassion and grace, you are going to give yourself the rule of perfectionism. And that rule is going to shut you down very quickly and probably cause some harm. So compassion and grace first and foremost. Welcome mistakes, they are your friends. Welcome feelings, they are your friend. They all matter. You don't need to get rid of your trauma in order to heal. You need to say, come here, you're important. You're part of me. I love you.
Yeah.
And then I do think this 5-minute sort of, it's not even a protocol or a method. I just decided to come up with it one day when I was to get my own dissertation done and was so overwhelmed. I was like, I can't write a dissertation. I was like, well, you could write for 5 minutes a day. And I thought, oh, yeah, I could do that. And I did 5 minutes a day. And then I wrote this huge sort of transformative thing because I didn't make it so big. I made it accessible to myself. And when I make it accessible to myself, it's an act of love. I love myself and I support myself because I'm not setting myself up for something that is unmanageable. That's what the system did to me.
Yeah.
It set me up for a target that is not achievable and then watched me struggle.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm going to rebel against that. No, thank you.
Absolutely.
5 minutes a day.
How gentle is that?
Yes, right? It is. It is so gentle. It is so loving. It is easy, even if it will be emotionally uncomfortable and difficult in that sense. It is easy. And again, I don't often use the word success. I use the word accessible.
Mm.
That's what we need. We think of success as if you work hard enough, and we ignore the system that oppresses people in various ways.
Mhm.
So don't think of it as success because then you think, I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. Think of it as accessible. What is accessible? What supports need to be in place? What can I achieve if given the appropriate resources and leeway and compassion? It changes everything. It changes how we think of other people. It changes how we think of ourselves.
Mhm.
So 5 minutes, I mean, 5 minutes of watching this talk and writing down what stood out most, 5 minutes of reflecting on, from the summit, what was the coolest thing that you heard, 5 minutes of crying, 5 minutes of making yourself a meal, even if it's cheese and crackers,
Mm.
right? 5 minutes of saying, oh, I'm hungry and I have a need, and actually I'm allowed to honor that. Whoa,
Mm. Wow.
whoa, what if, an audacious act.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I really am a sort of an advocate for the 5-minute rule, and
Mm.
this is where I will put my pitch in, and I have no good segues. I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm like, no, I'm going to put a pitch in right now.
Go for it. Pitch away.
That's terrible. So I actually do have a freebie, and this is where people can download a recovery guide, and it's a 5-minute recovery guide.
Awesome.
Right? And it's not like a little one pager. Like I put work into this and it's a full guide. And I'm walking you through how to think about recovery in this way and to evaluate it for yourself in a way that it is sustainable and fulfilling and nurturing for you. And it's about accessibility, and it's about, what supports do you need in place, and it's about the different belief systems that you have. And I want people to have this, and that's why it's a freebie, because I genuinely just want people to not feel stuck, right?
I
So
love that.
you can figure out how to put it in links. I don't know how to do that.
We'll have all that information. Don't you worry about a thing. But that is beautiful. I love that you're offering that. And I love the idea that you're offering, that it can be gradual. It can be, slow is fast, gentle.
Slow is fast, not fast is slow, which I said earlier. And this is me giving myself grace, because old Erin would have been like, oh my God, you have to do the interview over again.
We're going to leave this in, damn it.
We're
modeling imperfection.
Model that. Exactly.
Right. Beautiful.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, Erin. Well, thank you so much just for being here, for sharing all of this, all of your wisdom and this information. And everyone watching, I want to make sure that you be sure to head over and check out the resources that Erin is offering and take note of these recovery strategies that she's offering and putting into practice. So thank you, Erin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Taylor. I love what you do. I'm so excited to be here. Really appreciative.
Oh, of course, you're so welcome. Thank you. And thank you to everyone watching, and I hope that you all enjoy the rest of the summit.